What is it about the Negro? I mean, every other group that came as an immigrant somehow, not easily, but somehow got around it. Is it just the fact that Negroes are black?
White America must see that no other ethnic group has been a slave on American soil. That is one thing that other immigrant groups haven't had to face. The other thing is that the color became a stigma. American society made the Negro's color a stigma. America freed the slaves in 1863 through the Emancipation Proclamation of Abraham Lincoln, but gave the slaves no land or nothing in reality, and as a matter of fact, to get started on. At the same time, America was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that there was a willingness to give the white peasants from Europe an economic base. And yet it refused to give its black peasants from Africa, who came here involuntarily in chains and had worked free for 244 years, any kind of economic base. And so emancipation for the Negro was really freedom to hunger. It was freedom to the winds and rains of heaven. It was freedom without food to eat or land to cultivate, and therefore it was freedom and famine at the same time. And when white Americans tell the Negro to lift himself by his own bootstraps, they don't look over the legacy of slavery and segregation. I believe we ought to do all we can and seek to lift ourselves by our own bootstraps, but it's a cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And many Negroes, by the thousands and millions, have been left bootless as a result of all of these years of oppression and as a result of a society that deliberately made his color a stigma and something worthless.
That you see is my hero, a Christ-like figure that I've been following since day one. He readily gives us an explanation of what immigration means. It's always been hindrance to us as a people, as black people. And come January 20th, we're going to D.C. to celebrate Martin Luther King's birthday and to celebrate keeping the dream alive. And Ashley, I'd like you to respond to that. Roland, I don't think if you've ever seen that one. Grant was talking about it last time we were on, what he had stated in '67. Ashley, can you respond to that? Could you see it? Ashley, are you there?
Winston, I think she stepped off for a moment.
All right. Graham, that's the video
Yeah.
that you were talking about before.
Yes, it's imperative that we understand and know the true history of this country. They will talk about the glory days and
All
how
right,
good this was and how good that was.
Dr. Fields?
But for black people,
Well, it's great to see that. I've seen other parts of it. I think that it's really good to talk about Dr. King, and this federal holiday, January 20th, gives us an opportunity to do that. He is so eloquent in what he was saying, and it is the fact that African Americans, black people, have been under oppression, enslaved, and then faced Jim Crow, and then faced lynching, and then police brutality, violence, segregation, and the federal government, in fact, was responsible for discrimination and segregation in terms of housing. There's many examples of discrimination against black people. So it wasn't just that we were enslaved and then not given anything, but we also were actively being oppressed and segregated and discriminated against. And despite that, we have come forward, we've done a lot, we've contributed to this country and to the world. And so I think that Dr. King's spirit, his inspiration, his leadership is so important for us to keep on keeping on and to keep facing those obstacles as we build our movement for civil rights, for justice, for equality, for all of our people. So it's always great to see him.
Yeah. Dr. Fields is also a member of National Action Network, and I have two of my other patriots, followers of Martin Luther King, Owen Rogers and Damian Waters.
Walters, correct.
All right? Let's hear from Owen.
Well, we gather on the 20th at the King Memorial and at the church to celebrate his life. What he has done for our community and what he's done for the nation, really, is something that cannot be overestimated. And in these, what he might call dark days, we have to make sure that we understand what we're struggling for. We have to make it clear to our children, particularly, that Dr. King's life and yet even his death was something that was given in a way that to advance our children. It cannot be overstated that this lesson is being omitted from many, many, many of the schools, which is the disheartening conversation that we have to have. The things that our children are not taught in school that they need to learn. And I consistently say that we have the obligation to teach them.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If the teachers don't do it, we got to do
right.
it, educating our children.
Damien, part of the youth huddle. The originator is Ashley Sharpton. Tell us what you get from that.
Well, I stand in agreement with the panelist that's here before us today. It is very important that, especially in these days, that we project the image of Dr. King and promote his legacy, as well as to educate those in our community and those who are not in our community about the sacrifices that were made, that he made as it pertains to our rights, our civil rights, our dignity, and just the quality of life for humanity. Dr. King was not just about black people or brown people. He was about all people and making sure that humanity is at rest and that the quality of life of all people would be to the standards of what humanity requires.
One of the strongest themes I take out of Dr. King is you judge a person by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin.
Correct.
And if black people apply that to what they're going through, the Willie Lynch syndrome, which we're going to go through in Black history, I think you come out a different human being. When you learn to get around, you learn everybody's human. There's a human cause for all of us, and love energy is what we have to project now, since we have this demonic force in the White House. We just have to gear up for those 244 years that we've fought for freedom, and we've made some progress, but our biggest problem is getting along with each other.
Yeah, that is one big problem.
That's
You know,
all.
I did want to say something about January 20th, which I think this brings up, which is Dr. King's leadership and what we're doing on January 20th in terms of bringing people. So when he was assassinated, it was exactly a year to the date of the day, April 4th, 1967, when he spoke at Riverside Baptist Church
That's right.
and made that very powerful speech against the Vietnam War.
That's right.
And he was killed exactly a year later.
To
And
the
at
day.
that to the day,
to the
the
day.
day. And at the time, he was planning a Poor People's March
That's
on
right.
Washington, D.C. So January 20th, we're going, National Action Network, led by Reverend Sharpton, is going to Washington, D.C. And Dr. King was bringing together poor people, black people,
Right.
Appalachian, white people, Mexican Americans, Native Americans. He wanted to have all poor people represented, and he wasn't backing down in his opposition to the war in Vietnam. He was saying the money should go to these programs, it should go to helping poor people, to
That's
a
right.
basic income, and to social services, not to the war. All the energy that's being put into the war should go to the people.
Right.
He was making that statement. He was very strong. I admire him so much for being so independent of the establishment and so courageous and moral and standing up for righteousness, standing up for what was right. That war was wrong. And he was the one person who was saying that, and he did. He went forward with that despite the risk, and he knew about the risks. He knew
Well, the
about
risk
the
he
risks.
took was President Johnson, because that broke Johnson's heart.
Exactly.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. You say it was a year to the date from the Riverside sermon.
Yes,
Now,
a year
was it
later.
not that year and that moment during the Riverside sermon or during that time period that he was here in New York that there was an attempt on his life? So is it fair to say
That was earlier, actually,
Was
at
it?
Harlem Hospital.
Okay.
I know that Dr. Freeman, who's a surgeon, he was stabbed. He was signing books, but it was early. He was signing books at the Bloomfield department store on 125th Street,
Bloomstein.
and he was stabbed. Yeah, Bloomstein. Yeah, but he was stabbed by a woman who was having mental illness,
Yeah.
and they took him to Harlem Hospital, and they saved
Yeah.
his life. Dr.
Yeah.
Freeman did the surgery, but
Yeah.
that happened earlier.
Ashley and Graham? Ashley?
Thank you for sharing space. And thank you for always talking about important issues on the ground in and out of season. But just to echo what Dr. Fields was saying about King, Dr. King, and basically how he was talking about he was doing the Poor People's Campaign, basically going to what we're doing on the 20th. Reverend Sharpton, and I know we all listened to the Saturday Action Rally, but Reverend Sharpton made it plain basically about our agenda. One of our major focuses of why we're going to Washington, D.C. on January 20th, and we're gathering and rallying and marching, not at the inauguration, but specifically basically we're going from McPherson Park, and then we're going to a church that has historical significance, but our economic agenda. We're basically underlining economic justice, DEI. We've been leading the DEI fight for the past over a year now. Reverend Rod McHenry, who is a New York City House of Justice organizer, lead coordinator, has been leading, this is his 52nd week, leading DEI efforts outside of Bill Ackman's office. With that said, the national DEI fight is completely under attack, is almost dismantled. And that's one of the reasons why we're going to Washington in the spirit of Dr. King, because we feel like if Dr. King was alive, he would definitely be a part of the DEI fight. He definitely died because of some of the principles that DEI represents. For those who do not understand what I'm talking about, DEI is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that is one of the major legs of the march. Again, like I said, we're talking about economic justice, and Reverend Sharpton and our partners will be revealing our economic plan that day. If you want to know more about it, join us on January 20th. But I think it goes hand in hand with what Dr. King was doing with the Poor People's Campaign and what we're doing today as far as the economic agenda. A lot of us are in the streets. A lot of us are angry what's going on with Brooks, what's going on with police reform, with George Floyd. So many things is going on the ground. A lot is going on as far as internationally still with the war. But we can't forget about the day-to-day. DEI is something that's impacting all of us. It impacts our young people. I deal with the young youth and college division. It's going to impact them the most. So a lot of people are not energized because it's not the sexiest fight, because a lot of people don't understand why it's even relevant. But we need you guys to join us, because that's one of the major issues that we are going to be discussing and attacking on that day and laying out across the board is our economic fight. Again, like I said, police reform is something that we have been harping on since 1991. Since before that, we always talking about back to slavery, but all of this was an economic fight. People also argue that slavery was economics. But if we understand and really, really own in on our economic agenda and come together on it, we can move forward. This country understands money, and I feel like that's our only way that we can actually go forward. Honestly, we can scream as much as we want to, but without an real economic agenda and plan, we will continue to fail.
You know, Ashley, you're spot on. Economics is their economy. Economics, that's their God. And integration didn't come about as a result of white people coming to a Jesus moment. They analyzed what was going on.
That's right.
And they realized that Black people owned businesses.
That's right.
They owned property.
Farmland.
They played with the thinking of Black people. The notion that what white people had was better than what they had. And I'm sure that Winston will recall Peg Leg Bates, who had the only resort in the Catskills when we were kids. Well, when integration started, the Negroes ran away from Peg Leg Bates and went over to the Club Neverly and Brown's and the other places in the Catskills. And what happened to Peg Leg Bates? And he used to be on the Ed Sullivan Show. Peg Leg Bates went out of business. White people understood that if they included Blacks in their financial planning, they could get the money that Black people were not bringing to the white man's table.
That's right.
And as a result, we brought our money to the white man's table, and our businesses went under. We have to get back. That piece that you played, Winston, that whole piece, I think it's about 28 minutes. But people need to hear the economic approach of Martin Luther King. Because we spend a lot of money. Black people contribute trillions of dollars into this economy. Nike, which most black people own. I've never bought a pair and I never will. But most people wear a pair of Nikes and don't understand the history of that company and how that the fact is that their factories were only in countries of color. They never had a white person work in their factory. They paid their workers 37 cents an hour to make sneakers that Michael Jordan was promoting for $500 and $600. Our kids were killing each other over those sneakers.
They still are.
But we have to start doing research on these multinational corporations and understand how we are aiding and abetting them in the destruction of our own people, if not here, somewhere else on the planet. This is where we've got to come to the fact that we are ignorant of what's going on. We're being played on every street corner across the country.
Well,
We need to understand that we have value. Wearing somebody's name on our back or on our sleeve does not make us somebody. I refuse to wear anything. I bought a car years ago and I told the dealer, oh, when you prep the car, I don't want your name on the back of my car. Oh, well, I said, if you want to put your name on my car, it's going to cost you $100 a month. I don't advertise for free. And black people need to see the value in their self-worth and stop parading the streets with all of these names and logos on them. And I'm going to stop after this because I've got to go in a few minutes. We talk about brands. Let's make the connections. You brand an animal. They branded slaves because they were property.
that's right.
And nothing has changed. Black people are still being branded. They want to wear boo-boo. They want to wear this, Chanel. See these people on television, everybody's got Chanel. These people don't know you, don't want to know you. But they feel they have value because they're wearing the brand of the white man. They're still being branded. Let's wake up. We have to look back in history and understand how analogous that is to slavery, because they don't have our people enslaved in cabins with chains. The mind is gone.
Well,
We're not thinking. We don't understand. Slavery continues to this very day. And we have to break the mental and the psychological chains that are holding our people back.
which brings up the Willie Lynch syndrome, which we have to study more of, and you're going to get more of how we're brainwashed. I'm holding up to remember peg leg bass because that was in the 50s. But I even go back further to baseball, how they put black baseball out of business. We were the better. Right. We've always been the best of anything that we tried to do. You can see that in everything we do. Once they let us in the door, like James Brown says, don't open up the door, let me in.
I'll get it myself.
I'll get it for myself. And that's the way I was raised. I mean, I was raised, I'm born 1941 in Harlem. I'm a Harlemite. This is my homeland. And I was born 3 blocks from the Apollo, 124th and Manhattan Avenue. So I remember trolley cars on 125th Street, Bloomstein, the white Santa Claus. But we always knew back then that black people were the better. I mean, we looked at white people like they were stupid. I mean, it was really true. I mean, I always thought that. I always went to the beach and watched them get out and try to get my complexion. I was wondering, what's wrong with these people?
Can I ask you a question?
We've always had the love
Winston and
energy.
Graham?
We've always had the
Yes.
love energy.
So with all that you said, and I agree with most of the things that you said, do you think we've gotten too soft? Do you think that we've gotten too, like, as far as this generation of activists, or even the activists before my generation, because I'm 37. So what do you think has happened? Do you think it's a lack of knowledge? Where do you think it's failed?
When you
Or
call
do you
each
think
other
it's the
niggas,
same as usual?
when you take nigger
generation.
as a form of endearment, you're my nigger. You know how much we fought against that word alone? I mean, that's right there. That's baffling. When you take, I went to war. When black people call me nigger, You know? But now today it's easier because everybody's saying it. But still, I mean, I can call Trump a nigger because it means low life. I mean, that's what I always considered it. So Trump's a white nigger, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, what is he?
Unacceptable.
And
For me,
these are,
it's
this is
where
the
do we draw the
temperament
line?
that we're up against today. That they can put that man back in the White House. Everybody knows he's dead wrong, and yet people support him. It's all about money. We can't take racism as, we can't take it personal. It's about money. It's about making money. So that's how we turn on each other and everything else with the sneakers. Or keeping up with the Joneses. Not your integrity or the content of your character, which King taught us. We were loving people. I remember loving energy during segregation. My master was kind to me. I mean, my name is, my master's name, Gilchrist. It means worker for Christ. And what am I doing today? I'm working for Martin Luther King,
Absolutely.
the Christ-like figure.
Well, we were talking about history, and I feel optimistic, especially about our young people. I mean, I'm on the board of the All Stars Project. We work with young people in our communities, in our inner city communities, the Bronx, Harlem, Queens, Chicago, you know, Oakland, etc. We're a national organization. And I think that if we bring our people, young people and older people, our history, positive experience. I was at the food bank today. I did a workshop, Creating Our Mental Health, with folks at the food. I read this poem about Dr. King and some other things. We played some music. We did these theater exercises. I feel inspired by working with ordinary people. We have to fight. I'm working with folks who live in public housing. We're trying to fight to stop privatization of public housing. Talk about gentrification and people being disillusioned, being cynical, being, the schools are failing. They're not giving our young people what they need. So I think there is a lot of opportunity if we can bring positivity, experiences. I use creativity, theater, and poetry, and people love it. And I'm doing it all over the city. So I feel very, very hopeful and compassionate. I think if Dr. King was alive, he would be in the streets and working with our communities.
Of course.
And I, you know, we're doing a lot. Reverend Sharpton is doing magnificent. But I think there's still a lot at the grassroots that people are not being reached. And what are they being reached by? They're being reached by negativity, by the kinds of things, by labels and commercialism and all that.
Right.
That's what's on TV, you know.
Propaganda.
So anyway.
A critical part of us moving forward is recognizing and affirming those who are doing the positive stuff. Yeah. There's some other people out there that we really don't need to spend a lot of time on. But people like Dr. Fulani, people like Dr. Fields, we need to understand that they are giving of themselves in immense ways to lift us up. Our children need to know those names. We need to be able to talk about Michelle Alexander and have our children understand what we're talking about. It is critical that we, as the adults, posit ourselves as the teachers for our children, as opposed to some nonsense on ABC, CBS, or NBC. They click the TV and they learn a lot of nonsense. They don't even learn. They're exposed to a lot of nonsense when they do that. We need to be teaching our children separate from what the media is throwing at them. And this is something I think considerably for years and years. Certainly, Brother Witherspoon has been involved in that. And this program is to be commended because there are not many places on the dial you can get an education like you get an education here on the Gilchrist Experience.
Well,
That's our
I'm just
challenge.
saying, I'm a product of my environment, which is National Action Network.
Certainly, Reverend Sharpton is to be.
And my sermons come to me every Saturday. That's church for
Absolutely.
me. I've got my Christ-like figure on the wall, Martin Luther King, and then I've got my pastor, Reverend Sharpton, preaching to me, bringing to me his history, how God comes to him. And I feel the Spirit of God in that church every Saturday.
But we
And
not
it always has a political analysis of what's happening to us as a people.
Well, we not only need to put the responsibility on the parents, the grandparents, and those in the household to educate our kids because we do rely on the education system. And what we must do as a community, you know, people of your age and of your generation, although you all might not have any children in the education system, we still need to rely on you all to be a part of that system a part of the community boards, a part of the school boards, so that we can enforce the education of our children and teach our children about the civil rights history and what it took for people of color to accomplish what we've accomplished here in America. So we also need to put the pressure on our elected officials. I think we're really letting our elected officials get away with not doing their jobs, because they come to us and ask us for our votes, and we vote them in to deal with housing, to deal with education, to deal with health care, to deal with employment. And so therefore we have to hold them accountable to make sure that they're holding the school boards and the community boards accountable and responsible to make sure that they teach and have the curriculums that's needed in our school systems, so that the kids can get the information and be prepared as they move forward. Because we cannot move forward if we don't know where we've come from.
You know what I like to do? To every immigrant that comes to America, I like to run the piece that Martin Luther King said.
Well, absolutely, but I mean, the school system is filled with immigrants, so therefore we need to make sure that this curriculum is taught in New York City
Every
schools.
immigrant comes here and
But that-
takes
But not-
it, looks at us and
That-
like,
Ashley?
I'm sorry, Ashley. Go ahead, Ashley.
I was going to say not just immigrants. It's, if you go in our own communities, we don't know our own culture. We don't know our own history. We don't care. A lot of our young people don't care about it. So I think I salute to the All Stars Project. Definitely familiar with your work. Salute to those who are doing the work. Like Owen Rogers said, we need to amplify those who are reaching, who have figured out a way to reach the young people and the elders, because some of our elders don't know our history. And as Damien said, if we don't know where we've been, how are we going to go forward in a greater capacity? So I do think that we need to definitely go hand in hand with our elected officials. As we talked about at Huddle yesterday, it's an incredibly important election cycle that's happening this year. Everybody thinks it's all over because the presidential election is over. All the city council is up for re-election or election period. The mayor. So this is very important as far as we talk about education, as far as we talk about safety, as far as we talking about our history, everything, preserving our history, reaching our young people. All of that matters, and it goes hand in hand with politics. No one is really teaching civic engagement or the importance of civic engagement or knowing your history. So I think that we all have a responsibility on this call. You guys, I know, are vets at this. We've been doing it for a while now, but I definitely have my work cut out for me. But I definitely think that we need to continue to commit to what we're talking about actively, and not just talking about it, but commit to actually doing it.
Right, but to also,
Yes, and a lot of what goes out of the country to other countries with regard to who we are is very negative.
right.
Control of the media.
We need to break down and crack down on some of this N squared stuff I see on television. N squared is nigger nonsense, right? All this gangster nonsense, drug dealers, people calling each other bitches and hoes. I tell young girls, a bitch is a dog.
Red
They're on
talks
four
about it all
legs.
the
They
time.
have a tail. They have fur. You don't allow anybody, no guy, to call you a bitch. We need to put an end to this nigger nonsense on television. I don't care who's producing it. I don't care if they're black. We need to put an end to it because that stuff is being broadcast overseas. Other people come here with a pre-drawn conclusion
That's
as
it.
to what we're about.
That's it.
We had
programs
two
like this.
officers arresting a guy in Bed-Stuy 2 or 3 years ago. There's a black cop kicking a black guy in the head on the ground. The Hispanic officer grabbed him and said, "What are you doing? Are you crazy?" Well, that tape made its way to police headquarters. The black officer was terminated. His friends held a demonstration in front of 1PP. These are the Haitian American police officers. People come here.
That's it.
This is a
That's
black
it.
cop, comes here with the notion that he's not like the black people.
That's
here.
right.
And
All of them.
they were saying, well, why was he fired? Because the white guys do the same thing. This is the brainwashing that has gone on, not just here, but globally
Yeah.
with our people. That Willie Lynch syndrome, as you
That's
call
it.
it. All right?
That's
It is a danger to us. And there are people from other countries that come here and put that shield and badge on their chest and think they can treat black people in a certain way. And a lot of West Indians think they're better than American
That's
blacks.
right.
And I
We
had
get
to
that all
challenge
the
a
time.
doctor. I said, You're from the West. I got family from the West Indies. West Indians think they're better than everybody
That's
else.
right.
That's what they think.
That's right.
It's divide and
But
conquer.
how many
That's what it is.
colleges have you all built in the Caribbean?
But we
without the
also have
Queen?
to put
How many
blame on the
colleges?
Willie
You
Lynch
haven't built
syndrome,
one
and that's
college.
exactly where it
That's
comes
it.
Not
from.
one.
Because
All
I would
right?
have to
Y'all
agree
are
with
y'all
Brother
were
Grant.
brainwashed. The British were
I
the
lived
best
that.
at brainwashing people.
The bully on
Absolutely
my
the
block
best.
was West
And they're
Indian.
good at education too.
His family.
But the problem is, people come here from other parts of the world
That's
and
right.
think that black people in this country are less than they are.
That's
And that's
right.
a problem when it
That's
comes
right.
to inclusion
That's it.
with policing.
But I would like to take a moment to just to piggyback.
I'm
off
sorry, I
of-
have to go. I have a class I gotta,
All right,
so I
Grant.
gotta go. Love you all.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Brother
Thank
Willie.
you, Grant.
Thank you.
But I would just like to take the opportunity to piggyback off of what Ashley was saying, how we were discussing during the huddle on last Monday.
Yeah.
That I don't know if this is the first time ever, but it might be the first time in a long time that the entire city is up for re-election. Okay, so this gives us an opportunity as individuals and people who live in the community, as well as New York City citizens who are eligible to vote, to come up with an agenda and for us to coalitionize amongst each other to create a real agenda to push New York City into the future.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going backwards. You know,
Right.
I did not anticipate us going backwards, but I did anticipate the Republican parties and people who support the Republican Party to prevent us from progressing, but I really didn't expect them to try to take away our rights and the liberties that have been set before and signed into law prior to this administration who's coming in. And so we've got a lot of work to do, and I would like to extend the invitation to all other community groups to come join the National Action Network, come sit with us during the huddle so that we can have a conversation about what's taking place in our city, to see what we can do to create an agenda to put forth to those individuals who are running for office, who are
Absolutely.
seeking election, who are seeking our votes on this next
Yeah.
election cycle, so that we can make sure that we get what it is that we not only deserve, but we're entitled to, and what we need in our communities, so that we
Yeah.
can move this country forward.
I agree. I just wanted to say, I think I'm glad you brought it back to what Ashley was saying about democracy, all these elections coming up. I'm an independent. As I say, I'm a Lenore Falani independent. I think we could open up the electoral process, open up the political process, and include everybody, such as independents. I think we have to really we can do some creative and new and exciting things politically, not just tell people this is who you should vote for, but why should you vote for them? Try to really inspire the young people and the communities. This will make a difference.
But we
You
have
know,
to get, not to cut you off, I apologize, doctor, but we have to get these elected officials and those seeking seeking office to adopt our agenda. Because as it stands
Well-
right now, it appears that these individuals come before us and say they
Right.
want to make changes in our community.
And they don't do
but
it.
not only do they not do it, but they're still operating using the antiquated system of politics.
They are, absolutely.
you know-
They don't do it because they don't have to do it. Because
Right.
they get reelected even if the community
Right.
is not voting.
Right.
And we have to change that. That's part of the political structure. It's rigged. A small number of people vote in the primary, they win the election because they're on the Democratic ticket, and that's it. But they don't have to be accountable. We can't hold them accountable. We have to be able to hold our elected officials accountable, and that means revitalizing, opening up our political process,
Well,
and
they
having
all-
some new
Before
people.
election, they all come to National Action Network to
Right.
speak their piece.
But you
They
can't
know
All
they
right,
expect.
you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to bring in an extra reason why we're going January 20th.
But let me
to
just say this,
DC.
Winston. We can't expect change using the old way of doing things.
Right.
That's an oxymoron. It just
We have
doesn't
to
make any
innovate.
sense.
Yeah,
If
we have
we
to do new
coalesce as a
things.
group,
You know,
we
you
have to
can't
innovate and do things
look for
new ways.
change.
Coming from National Action
Using the
Network.
same old methods and
Right.
the same old ways and dealing
I-
with the same
absolutely.
old
But
policies.
I think to combine what everyone is saying, and I know Winston you're about to speak, I agree with what everyone just said. I think we should combine everything from what we just saw with this last election with VP Kamala Harris. We lost, right? If we don't learn the lesson of that failure, of that loss, then we are foolish. If we continue to do the same thing over and over again, continue to depend on the same voices, the same celebrities, the same strategy, that's stupid. We lost. Going forward, and I'm not a slave to any party, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, whatever. Like you said, I want to hold those accountable to what they say, to what they say they're going to do in that office.
Right.
Just like with Trump, I'm not just going to DC just to swing at him because it's like, oh, he's Trump and I'm anti-Trump. I'm not, that's not how I'm built. That's not the type of activist that I am or that I feel that Nan is. We're going there because there was a strike already. We've seen Trump in what he did before while he was in office. We've heard what they're trying to do with Project 2025 and who that will impact, and that is us. We're included in that group. So at the end of the day, I do think that we need to do something different. We must do something different. We cannot just invite them to come to NAN and speak to us. We know that they have access. We know that we are voters. We know that we are a voting pool. But what are we as the voters going to do about that? We know that Rep has access and get all of them to come, and we know that they're coming on King Day. But what are we going to do about that agenda? What are we going to do differently?
Right.
From silent protest to basically organizing in the organization. What are we prepared to do? I know I'm prepared to do something different, and I know we can't announce what we're going to do on this call, but I definitely invite you, like Damien said, to come huddle up with us on Mondays, to come join with the All Stars Project, to come sit with Owen Rogers and his group and figure out, or Don Jones' Political Action Committee, and figure out how we do this differently. Because if we continue to do the same thing over and over again, same strategy, same people, same voices, and just different generations of that, we will end up in the same place or stagnant or worse. That's just my opinion.
Thank you.
And please just let me allow to share this as well.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris didn't win the presidency because a number of individuals did not come out to vote for her. Not just in New York
That's
City, but
obvious.
all across the country. Now,
There were several reasons, not just one. Just
Absolutely.
throwing that out. You're right, but there was more than one reason why we lost.
Right.
For several reasons. But sorry, I'll shut up.
Because she was a woman.
No, absolutely.
For some
Because she was a
see,
woman.
what
For some people,
people-
yeah.
But what people fail to realize is that the local elected officials, many of them are delegates to the New York's National Democratic Convention. And so their responsibility is to help pull out the vote in their districts and in their communities and in their states. You have to understand, voting is down because people are complacent, they're
Right.
tired, and they have lost faith within the political system and those who seek electoral office in our communities. And so therefore, if the local elected officials can't bring out the constituency to vote for them, how is it that they can bring people out to vote for the
Kamala Harris, yeah.
national elections? See, all politics is local. And I'll just reiterate it again. If you can't pull your own district out to vote for you, how could you pull the vote out for anybody else? Why aren't they voting? Because the school systems are bad. The police department is still doing what it is that they want to do. Slumlords are still running the city. You understand what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
people are hurting and people are suffering at the hands of those who are coming asking for our votes. And so we're not here to bash the elected officials, because many of them we've grown up with, many of them we know, some of them are even friends and family members of ours. So we're just trying to bring to light what the issues are, hopefully that they will get on board, acknowledge what our pain is, and work on behalf of the constituencies in which that they come out and ask us to vote for them. So
Well, let me just put this into a perspective of why we had Trump. The first issue is that 2016, we had a chance to put a successor to Obama. Obama, to me, was a blessing from God. I mean, I thought it was absolutely perfect. But a lot of black people didn't like Obama for several reasons. I think one of them was his mother was white. I've gotten a lot of feedback from that because I had this same program on.
And a lot of people stayed home.
But see, what happened with Hillary is they didn't vote for her for all the misdeeds of her husband.
right.
All right? And Trump was supported by the Russians, which people didn't realize at the time. Trump was shocked he won. He was trying to open up a Trump Tower in Moscow.
Correct.
That's how him and Trump got together, and Trump supported him in 2012 when he was broke, borrowing from Deutsche Bank, which is the mafia bank for the Russians, the Russian mafia bank. But all this to say that Trump got in there because we didn't vote for a woman again.
I was about to say, let's not forget misogyny. I think that was a major point that we keep forgetting, from Hillary to VP Kamala Harris, all the way back to Shirley Chisholm.
You're right. Absolutely right.
So what was it?
Misogyny. She was just.
Well, it doesn't exist.
No, she's saying that she's adding that
That's-
as a.
That's the
Of
burden.
That's
that-
what you're saying. She's
That's
saying
the
in terms
Kamala
of
Harris-
Kamala Harris losing.
and
But
Hillary
people
Clinton
didn't
both have to
vote
carry
for
that burden.
Kamala.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I thought this is a blessing from God again. Now, black people, and I know they're going to wake up. And I just didn't believe that they would put Trump back in office. We impeached him twice. He's a New York hustler. Everybody above 50 knows him as a playboy. He went with black people when they had money. He's about money. Don't take it personal. It's all about money. Elon Musk spent how much money to steal this election? The election was stolen.
$250 million.
I bet you later on we're going to find out it was stolen. And we should have protested more.
Well,
Let's say, Ashley, what do you think of that one?
We've already seen that. If you go on the right Facebook account, you've seen that it was stolen. You've seen that we should have. If I run Rev social media accounts, they have comments all day like, "Oh, we should be outside protesting the election results." It was AI. It was this. It was so much. It's so many theories about the election. At the end of the day, we don't know. It might come out later that something was happening. But right now, according to the results that we know, we did not win. We did not win by a lot. So I think, like I said before, we have a lot to learn from this. A lot of contributing factors, of course, were involved. Like it was said earlier, a lot of people stayed home. They were not enthused about it. Misogyny was a part of it. Some people did not like either of the candidates. Trump, as far as the media, there was a lot of the media playing with it from left to the right. So there was several factors. With Obama, there was also several factors, but he won. It was better. I mean, we can't ignore the obvious. He had a stronger campaign. And let's also, when I say misogyny, I don't want you to just think I'm talking about, men, women.
That's right.
Black
That's right.
women.
Right.
Black women did not vote for Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
They said they were. They did not. They were all
right.
at the marches, ringing home on the Zoom, saying, "Oh yes, it's time for that change." But when they got in that booth, did they really believe? No. I know a few people who did that. So let's really tell the truth and shame the devil. It's not just. I'm not just talking about
I'm
when I say
glad you
misogyny.
said
Men,
that.
women.
And some
did
of
not
these
believe that
people were
another
personal
human
friends of
being.
mine. I mean,
Same
women,
thing with
personal friends
Hillary.
of mine who
It's
refused
the same thing with
to vote
Hillary.
for Kamala Harris.
A lot of women voted against Hillary too.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. So we can
Yeah.
all say that we're this so progressive and we're in a new day, but how real is that? How real is it?
How do you
real is it?
really know?
And we also need to and I might get in trouble for this statement, but a lot to do with it was the whole LGBTQ fight. And going on with the scaring about the transgenders using the same bathrooms and basically being on the same teams and playing. When you talk to parents about that issue, there was not a strong enough response from the left about how that was going to be handled. When it basically said that they were going to allow that to happen, it was not a strong enough response. Even Reverend Sharpton has said that across. It should have been a stronger response. That's scary. So we have to make sure parents feel protected in the vote. We have to feel that we're on the ground answering these questions. People in Harlem have an issue with someone they feel that they say a boy is going into the girls' bathroom. That is a concern. But if it's not needed, if that's not what they meant, or if that was going to be handled a different way, the verbiage, the language has to be better. They have to understand that they're speaking to a whole bunch of different people, and you have to understand your audience. I think that there was a lack of understanding your audience, and I'm not going, like I said, it's a whole bunch of different issues from misogyny also, but I also think that there were certain things that the Democrats did not do with this election that they could have done.
hopefully, as we gather in D.C. on the 20th, we'll have enough people with the fervor to go home to their home base and bring people together over issues that will strengthen us. I think a lot of people will pat Reverend Sharpton on the shoulder and say, "You did a good job," but then they go home and sleep. We have to make sure those people, if they support the march on the 20th in D.C., that they're coming home to their churches, to their block associations, to their PTAs, that they're coming home to a place where they can then spread the fervor, where they can then tell people, here's what you can do to improve our community. Here's what you can do to keep drugs out of your building. Here's what you can do about the children who need to be adopted, who are living without parents. You know, this is the result that we should anticipate and plan for when we leave DC on the 20th. And that other ridiculous rump, we won't talk about him.
Yeah, I think there's also has to be a real connection. I think honestly there was a lack of a connection, like you're talking about, with the communities, with the grassroots communities from the campaign. I think it was a lot top down, but was it getting to the heart and responding to these concerns that Ashley's talking about, these issues in a way that touched people, that people really felt that they could trust this was something that they were connected to. I think there was a sort of alienation from a lot of ordinary people in the communities, and that has. I mean, we could learn a lot from this, as Ashley's saying, from what happened in this election.
Well, I want to run one more roll in before we leave, and perhaps we can talk about. I want you to run Martin Luther King. I Have a Dream. And I want you to go back to and think about what '63 was like and what this is really about. The 1963, I mean, I was 22 at the time.
Jobs, peace, freedom.
And this was really an uplift for a whole nation.
Yes, it was.
I mean, there were white movie stars there. People don't realize
Brando.
that Marlon Brando and a lot of the big
Liberal Hollywood was there.
liberal Hollywood preachers were there. Preachers, I mean, well, they were
Actors.
preaching integration. 4, I think. The 4? No, not 4. 3. Try 3.
The March in Washington, 1963, which some of our young ones don't even know what we're talking about. And again, it's our fault because we didn't
gotta
teach
them.
We
gotta
didn't teach them, you know, and
we
but
got to
that was-
continue it. Like, you know,
Yeah.
I don't think we.
You'd
that
be
was a
surprised
significant
how
moment
many
in our
people-
history.
We start talking about discrimination, we start talking about segregation, we start talking about Jim Crow, we start talking about apartheid, we start talking about police brutality. These are all symptoms of white supremacy.
The more insecure white men become, the more they feel a need to exert their superiority, their power and their force. And so the one obvious victim of white rage has always been black men.
White people actually love us. They really do. They want us here. They love us not in the sense that they respect us or want to treat us fairly, but they love us the way a master loves his dog.
And there's a big difference between being a slave and being enslaved. Okay? Enslaved is mental. Okay? Slave is physical.
If you look at black America and you look at black men and put them in 2 categories, there are those who are popular and then those who are great.
Racism is the raping of a continent, of a humanity of people, of materials and resources, and using them to enrich yourself and validating that for the rest of time.
Any black man who stands for his people, any black man who is against the white supremacist structure and is willing to stand by any means against any threats, is indeed going to be considered a terrorist.
Because as long as African people were in charge of the planet, there was harmony. There was no wars between China, Japan, the American Indians, the Carib. As long as we were in control, there was harmony on the planet Earth.
You know, I often say when I lecture that the African that got on that boat is not the African that got off that boat.
When you conquer a civilization, you're actually conquering their God. Because what do? You change the name of God once you change their religion, once you change their culture.
There's a bitterness and an anger towards black people for not allowing themselves to remain in slavery so white people can feel privileged.
White supremacy is the only religion that isn't a religion. However, it is the most powerful religion on the planet.
Now, that's a case history. I think everybody should watch the history, the religion of white supremacy. You have to understand, we have to study our enemy. This is the people who are controlling our environment. I mean, we as black people have to understand who we're fighting against instead of fighting each other. This is the white supremacy, the religion of white supremacy. This documentary is a must to see. I'm going to start sending it around, and we're going to spend a lot of time, Damien and I, about white supremacy, the religion of white supremacy. Ashley, what do you think about that one?
Well, Hidden Colors, I definitely is definitely a series, a documentary series that like you said, everyone should see. It's definitely some things. Some people will like. Some people they will be shocked to hear. Some people won't like it. But I definitely think that it is something that definitely teaches education that is not necessarily or probably not heard at all in the education system or in our classrooms. So I definitely think it's important. I went to the Johnson Preparatory School, which was an all-black school in Brooklyn, and we learned. We had our own curriculum, and we learned logic and rhetoric, Black history. We were reading on the 12th grade reading level at the age of 11. So I definitely think that it's important if you are prepared and if you have the support at home, because some things that you definitely need to watch with someone who understands what's going on to even go in more depth about white supremacy and about definitely certain things that are said on Hidden Colors, I'll say that, and certain teachings. But I definitely think it's important to share. I definitely think it's important for especially every Black child to learn, to watch, to engage, and definitely be front row for for a lot of Pan-African teachers that I was as a child, that I learned being at the National Network and growing up as Reverend Sharpton and Kathy Jordan Sharpton's daughter. So yes, I must say. But I think that was interesting that you played that for Dr. King's, to go into Dr. King's week. I thought that was interesting. But yeah, I'll save that for another show.
Damien?
No, I would have to stand in total agreement.
So-
I would have to stand in total agreement.
So Ashley's on the money. She's always on.
It's hard to follow her sometimes.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I think the white supremacy is structural. I think it's
Of
structured
course.
in our economy
That's
and
it.
how the economy works. It works as
exactly.
enslavement in a way has continued with it. They're making money off of the backs of poor people, Black people, and others.
Now that's the problem. We have to have a conversation about what's the solution.
Well, the solution is, and understand, it's about greed and selfishness. And we're about loving and democracy.
Well, the
So we
solution,
have to
the
change
solution is
structure.
educating the masses as to what's really taking place. Because
Especially
we've all been
Black people.
hoodwinked,
And
bamboozled,
all
and we just many of us are just unaware because it's been built into the American psyche as to this is how we think, this is how we walk, this is the way we talk, these are the policies, these are the protocols of America. And so once we, I don't want to use the term expose, but once we educate the masses as to the fundamentals of American society, it'll be easier for us to organize because now people will know what we're up against.
But
Because
don't
it's a
they-
psychology, you know.
Don't they preach the document, the Constitution? All we have to do is go by the Constitution.
But we
follow
don't
the
do it
rules.
enough. We need to teach our children. One thing, former
But the
council
white
member,
supremacists
former
doesn't follow the
Councilman Larry Seabrook, along with a few other the former elected officials, one thing that they always taught me was to carry the Constitution in your pocket. Unfortunately, I don't have it in my pocket today, but we all should arm
It's in your
ourselves
phone.
with the Constitution and familiarize ourselves with the Constitution because this country is a country based on laws. And if you know the law, then you can hold people accountable to the law. If you go into any courthouse, to any court case, all kind of things are said, done, and not done appropriately, and all kind of ethics are not being followed. And it's because many of us don't know what the rules, the protocols, and what the law is. And so once you know that, then you can stand up and advocate for yourself to a judge or to the opponent that you're fighting in court. But if you don't know the laws, there's no way that you can defend yourself. See, I walk in no fear because I'm not saying I know every law, but I know enough to keep the bad guys away or to even put some of them away.
Ashley, I got 2 minutes left. You want to say something before we go?
Yes, I just want to, just reflecting on everything we spoke about in this past hour, I think that we should end on calling people to, especially going into King Week and all of that, the three evils that Dr. King spoke about. And I believe it was materialism, racism, and militarism, correct?
Yeah.
Right? Is that right?
You got it.
April 4th.
Okay. So basically, I think that we hit about materialism. Graham was talking about that earlier. about using your money, about the economic power. That's part of our economic agenda for the 20th. But I think the three evils, if we talk about that militarism, what's going on with this war, but not just the war, violence and conflict being the answer to everything. Basically, war doesn't mean somebody is right. It just means that somebody killed the most people, or that basically their deal was better. It doesn't necessarily mean they're right, but we lose basically peace, love, basically with conflict and with violence. So that's the militarism part of it. Materialism we've already discussed, and of course racism, which I think that was the last part of this piece that we were talking about, white supremacy. If we teach, if really teach, and I can't go into it because we only have a few minutes, about the three evils, and in this Dr. King, in this whole Dr. King dance that's about to happen, because I don't want to say dance because we truly honor him. Some of us truly love and honor what he did and what sacrifice was about in his beloved community. But some people, it's just for the optics. It's just for the fluff. And going into that, I just feel like we should teach about the three evils. I'm going to commit to teaching about that on Monday with Huddle, and basically showing a snippet of that about what he talked about, so we really understand about that. If we understood that fully, we can go into the Trump era not so fearful, but a little more confident in our fight.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Important. All right. I put you to the time up. I don't know how much time we have. Well, thank you for coming. It's been a joy today.
Jesus in me, thanks to Jesus in you.
But the God in me loves the God in you, and stay tuned for more of the Gilchrist experience. And hopefully we can get Ashley to come back and spend a few minutes with us every week. I mean, you're a joy. Thank you.
I'd be honored. Thank you.
Love you.
Thank you all.
It's been fun. And power to the people.
Power to the people.
But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. And so just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.